So you're meeting to discuss the next 3-year plan for that public library network. As we've just seen, a lot can happen in 3 years. Our phones get smaller, our computers get faster. Oh, and the global pandemic and the first land war in Europe since the 1940s happen? I've spoken to a lot of librarians around the world about the effects of the pandemic and identified 2 trends: disruption and acceleration. Disruption is pretty obvious. Facility lockdowns, masking mandates, protective gear, and the like. But what is remarked upon most is acceleration. That the disruption sped the adoption of new policies, procedures, and technologies. More libraries went fine-free. Many libraries that required in-person sign-up for library cards implemented virtual sign-ups and renewals. Experimentation with online programming, from author talks to gaming to you name it, became the default way of offering services. When the pandemic began, most public libraries were quickly reduced to e-book loans and Wi-Fi in the parking lot. Yet a month or 2 later, libraries were offering virtual story times, telemedicine services, Wi-Fi hotspot loans. Later, libraries became polling places, testing and vaccination centers, teaming up with industry and public health. Bottom line is that the past 3 years have not been a holding pattern, but a runway launching new initiatives, transforming library staff from organizers with friendly faces to content creators and innovators still with friendly faces. I tell you all this because I'm not going to spend much time on the pandemic and thinking about the next 3 years. What I am going to talk about is how library networks are transforming. That transformation may have been accelerated by COVID, but the heart of that transformation has been in the works for decades. I'll start by giving away the ending. Library networks are more important than ever, but only if they allow individual libraries to innovate and become uniquely points of local service, with library professionals, not service standards, forming the focus of the network. Or put more simply, I see the future of the network not helping us work together by everyone sharing the same services, but by empowering library staff to become hyper-local. This is a change in the work and nature of the network. It is possible because of how successful networks have been to this point on things like standards. Through the mutual adoption of standards in cataloging and circulation, reference, and the like, we've expanded our basic functions so we can more seamlessly work together. I'll call this a platform. We have built a platform that allows us to share materials, records, and statistics. These standards allow us to do our work better, but they are focused on the work of librarians, not on the impact in our communities. Libraries across the globe are using the platform largely in place to shift their focus to centering on the community in their work, and in creating truly participatory spaces where they are co-owned with the community. From buying books based on community members' requests, to having writer residencies, to maker spaces, library services are no longer just library staff offering services, but having the library facilitate the sharing of knowledge within the community. All while retaining the values, mission, and means that librarianship has developed over centuries. Because each community is different, and our libraries now better reflect the community, our libraries are increasingly looking more and more like their localities and less like some standard image of a library. There was a time when you could go into a library in Kenya, Melbourne, and Texas and expect to see the same thing, a reference desks, books, and shelves. Now, you may walk into a library hosting a comic book festival in Oslo, a farm in upstate New York, or a community-wide meal in Philadelphia. The things that connect all these unique libraries are people. The community members themselves, certainly, but also librarians and other library staff that are constantly identifying what is best about the community and sharing it beyond city borders, and simultaneously looking beyond those own borders for great ideas to adopt and adapt to their local needs. This is the task of an educated professional, an innovator, not simply clerks. But this is all a bit abstract. Allow me to take this thesis. As libraries better serve their communities by better reflecting them, they need for library networks both increases and changes, and illustrate it. First, let's take the obvious. Communities are unique. They differ by their populations. Communities are shaped by their demographics, issues of class, wealth distribution, and their history. However, and perhaps more importantly, they differ in their aspiration and needs. Does your community seek to be a place of making with roots in manufacturing? Does it seek to be a place learning with reading and publishing first and foremost? Of course, all communities may want all of these things, but their emphasis and unique character will rise to the top. I live in Austin, Texas. It calls itself the world capital for live music. In advertising, in civic events, and in all sorts of ways, music is a theme. If you fly into the airport, you'll be welcomed with musicians playing in the terminal. Does this mean that everyone is a musician? Take it from my third grade violin teacher, absolutely not. But it is a point of pride for the community and a brand for the rest of the world. Communities also vary by the resources they have in place. This may be a university or a dramatic countryside. In Seattle, the public library is a technologically intensive experience. In the hills of the Netherlands, you can check out a nature trail for hiking. As we all know, our communities are also shaped by how we choose to govern ourselves. The taxes taken, the regulations passed, the allocation of property, the ideology of the electorate all matter and make the places we live unique. Our libraries need to reflect this. This idea is already found in the commercial sector. Chain restaurants hang local imagery or add local flavors to the menus. Local businesses build relationships with customers so brand loyalty becomes more about than just transactions. International corporations create regional subsidies. And the best libraries around the globe are capturing this distinct local flavor in how they run. Take the Fayetteville Free Library in upstate New York. In Fayetteville, as across the United States, the librarians saw underrepresentation of girls in the sciences and engineering. To address the gap, the library teamed with the local community to create a summer camp for girls. Campers used 3D printers, built machines, and played on non-Newtonian fluids. At one point, folks in the library had pom-poms whizzing over their heads as the girls tried out catapults that they had designed. If you look at that camp, however, it is not simply librarians offering programs. The campers learned from female engineers that lived in the town. They had talks from female jet pilots who worked less than an hour away. In the activities, campers saw their neighbors as experts and role models in something more powerful than a YouTube video or an online webinar. Compare this to the Toronto Public Library 3 hours away. TPL offers classes in digital privacy. But instead of classes on the dangers of Facebook, citizens can experience how machine learning works and see directly how algorithms can automate bias. This privacy work has turned into work with the tech industry to ensure citizen data is handled ethically. Different places, different resources, different approaches, but both libraries doing the same job, making society better through facilitating knowledge. In Charleston, South Carolina, the library became a polling place during a contentious election to reassure the community members of the integrity of that election. It also opened its doors as a COVID testing facility and later a vaccination center. The library put out ads that featured librarians telling why they got the vaccine, turning the trust they had built over decades into beneficial action. Trust, by the way, not in books or buildings, but trained knowledge professionals they had come to know and count on. Libraries in a network need not be pushing for uniformity, but increasingly take advantage of the network to allow it to become more focused on communities and more unique. I know that sounds like a paradox. They come together to be different, but it works. In some ways, it's like the internet. The internet is not a single network or a single set of technologies. Instead, it's a common set of standards that allow just about any piece of unique technology to talk to another unique node on the network. Mac, PC, wired wireless, massive data centers, a single mobile phone, all can connect together to support a very different user experience. On a daily basis, you use the internet to play games, send email, maybe submit taxes, watch movies, just about everything. And the person sitting next to you may use the same network to do very different things. This collective individuality can be seen in 2 libraries in my home state of Texas. Texas is very big. It has big cities and a lot of small rural communities. I believe this will sound familiar. 80% of the citizens of Texas are served by 20% of the libraries. These tend to be large urban and suburban systems like Dallas and Austin. 80% of libraries in the state serve 20% of the populations. Towns of less than 25,000 and many like Pottsboro, Texas, that only serve 1,500 people. If you compare the Pottsboro Public Library to the Austin Public Library, you'll find the differences you might expect. Pottsboro's annual operating budget, $35,000, compared to Austin of over $58 million. Pottsboro has 1 full-time staff and the director receives no salary. Austin has over 400 staff and the director has a 6-figure annual pay. Yet, both are part of the same statewide network and supported by the same state library. How does that play out? While Austin has some great services, the Pottsboro Public Library, housed in an old rural post office, is recognized as one of the most innovative libraries in the country. It offers esports teams. It has VR and robotics programs. It has a full library of things and beams free Wi-Fi internet to houses in a 2-mile radius using white space on the radio spectrum. During the pandemic, the library opened a telehealth room with a private external entrance and high bandwidth connection to a regional health center. How can such a small library do all of this? Through grants from the state library and by building strong connections to their local government. They're able to demonstrate their value to neighbors with the data the state library gathers on positive outcomes. Pottsboro still uses the common platform, offering the same online ebooks and databases as Austin through statewide licensing agreements. But these basic services allow the state library and Pottsboro to fly and create a special connection with the citizens of this rural Texas town. Can you imagine if the potential if every town in your state had as innovative library, regardless of size, as the citizens of Pottsboro do? This way of thinking about library networks, and libraries in general, is new in the past decade or so. It breaks a century of seeing libraries as efficient access points put in place by Melville Dewey. Dewey and his companions sought to minimize the unique aspects of libraries to make them more efficient. No more every library having its own catalog scheme. Now we all share one universal system. An idea that would eventually decimate the ranks of catalogers, replaced with copy cataloging. But you have to understand, the move was as rooted in the time as Dewey was. When he was doing this, it was at the rise of industrialization and the assembly lines of Gerald Ford. Dewey and Cutter and the librarians of the day saw the end of libraries unless they could operate on an industrial scale, his words. Libraries needed to become standardized, right down to the education of the librarian. Parts of this view have value, the platform, but it's been taken too far. At times, we have forgotten that the goal of librarianship is not efficient organization of stuff, but the enlightenment of people. Our goal should not be to spend less money, but to effectively open more minds. We are not in the book business. If we were, we would wrap them in plastic and let people take them home. We're not in the building business. If we were, all libraries would look alike. Instead, our communities now build them as one of the kinds of cathedrals of knowledge. When Oslo built their new main library, it sought to have world-class architecture that would match the startling design of a seaside opera house it had built next to. When the building opened, they brought over only half the collection of the old library. Not to make room for future book buying, but to make space for people and collaboration and entertainment and co-working. What we are then is the people business. And more than that, the people learning business. And that takes people. The library network we build tomorrow should not be around the efficient passing of materials, but finding the best ideas to elevate our communities, adapt those ideas to our local diversity, and then share what we have learned with the rest of the librarians in the network. The next library network is a network first and foremost of librarians. The age of toolkits and meeting in committees to develop best practice is over. The network of tomorrow is a peer learning network where librarian and library staff, from director to first-year clerk, can connect to peers, take classes, and, most importantly, share great ideas. What does a network founded on peer learning do? It offers mentorships. It arranges for staff exchange where librarians can do residencies in other towns. It works with network members and global experts to develop courses. It offers new forms of certification. Instead of certificates that document participation in a workshop, it offers a dynamic portfolio of competencies that can be documented and documents the continuous learning of staff. The network we need acts as a sort of scribe, a responsive body that transforms innovation into instruction. No longer finding what works, assuming it works everywhere, and creating a step-by-step guide. Rather, it identifies innovation, documents it, and works with their innovators to train others in how to adapt, not simply adopt, new services if they fit the local community. The network effectively collects data and stories from the libraries on the network. Data makes stories real, but stories make data matter. The network is constantly scanning the environment, internally and externally, infusing the network with good ideas in the form of speakers and research papers and connections to peers across the globe. The Learning Network hosts hybrid participatory design charrettes, bringing together a truly diverse body of staff and community members to explore new ways of offering services to youth or seniors or business or government of all of our community. These ad hoc teams build pop-up experimental libraries to try out ideas in a safe space for constructive criticism. The networks we need also act as ready partners in research. We should be able to work with scholars and companies to generate research projects, being able to quickly stand up multiple libraries for partnership. What does that mean? Well, in the European Union, environmental scientists were able to work with the European-wide body of libraries to gather pollution data. And just as importantly, train citizen scientists to collect data in that study. No longer should scholars approach libraries simply as places citizens meet. We need to be partners that instruct the researchers about the power of libraries, privacy, and diversity as original data is collected. You have a great task before you, to build and direct a group of aligned organizations through one of the most turbulent times in recent history. Yet we know that getting through these times takes agility and inventiveness, not a monolithic boilerplate of service definitions. The future prosperity of our communities, of our democracies, of our very climate will come not from one grand vision, but local ingenuity harnessed and spread about. That doesn't come from a single committee or a single service, but from hyper-local commitments to a better tomorrow. It was this promise that founded our libraries in the first place. It is our time to do it again.